Welcome to On Top of the Covers, a weekly podcast by Orlove dedicated to all of the creative visionaries, the entrepreneurs, artists, makers, disruptors, all of you guys really pushing boundaries in art and in music and, really expressing yourselves in all these new ways that we are able to because of internet and technology. And on the show, we feature inspirational stories of people contributing to the culture of music every single week. We look at how they are doing it creatively, artistically, personally, professionally. Want to welcome you to the show. I'm Matt Gottesman, the host and director of the Orlove brands, and you can reach out to me at Matt Gottesman on Instagram. You can also reach out to us at We Are Orlove on Instagram. And as you guys know, I answer each and every single DM, text, reply, response. I have done so for like the last 8 or 9 years. Yep. But I also believe in community, and it's great to connect with all of you guys and get that ongoing feedback. And, as we always say, music is this common, massive connector in the world. It's what gives us all this common bond. So we wanted to take it up a notch and open up conversations on the art side, the contribution side, the creator side, the missions, the people playing different roles, constantly contributing, right, to music in some way. And we really also want to demonstrate unconventional ways to quote unquote success. Success is a very arbitrary word, and I think it really comes down to what that looks like to the individual, right? So without further ado, we're going to dive right in. I got another amazing guest, Marco Sgalbazzini. Did I say that right?
That's right. Yeah, you did.
Perfect. He would tell me if I butchered it, and he'll correct me if I need to. But he's Chief Growth Officer and Executive Director for 6 a.m., overseeing content, social media, events. And he's also founder of Synthetic Minds, an event brand, and a co-founder of Work, Compound, and Reform, an events brand. He was born in Italy, here in the U.S. since 2010, in L.A. since 2015. So we know he's got a lot of great stories. Personal passions, obviously, are football, of course, come from Italy. Soccer, for everybody listening. Crypto, depending on where you are in the world. I mean, we've got an international audience. So crypto, I already told him I can geek out with him on that. Anything with nature and hiking and backpacking, stoicism. So we're going to talk a little bit about mental health, which also is coming up quite a bit lately. And I'm very happy to be able to talk about that because, in the arts, a lot of times, creatives and creators and visionaries, a lot of times we all love expressing ourselves. But, with the expression is also because we're able to feel. And if we're able to feel, we're also able to, know that we have a lot of emotions and we're wanting to deal with them in some way. Some people want to deal with them, some of them don't. And that, is why I think it's such a great time to have these type of conversations. He's also a dad to Wolf Dog. He made a note of that. I love that. And so we're going to kind of talk a little bit all across the board. We're going to talk a little bit about his background, what he does for 6 a.m., but we're going to go even further back and how we got here. But before we do, first, I just want to welcome you to the show, Marco. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate having you.
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure being on. I'm really excited to get to talk to you about all of these topics today.
Yeah. And I love that. I was like, what direction you want to go? And he's like, some of them, all of them, wherever you want to go. And everybody knows I love conversations that just flow. So, we do something a little bit, for those that have been tuning in, a little less traditional in that we do rapid fire questions for them at the beginning of every show. We don't wait till the end. Some people wait till the end. We do it at the beginning because we love to see the creative flow and thought process of the guest and the things that they like. So, Marco, without further ado, are you ready for that?
I'm ready.
All
Shoot
right.
away.
Awesome. So question number 1 is, if all music is gone and you could save only 3 albums for the rest of the existence of world, what would they be?
It's a really hard question for me because I love a lot of genres of music. Most people would think that I would go with electronic music, and kind of my answers somewhat touch that. But I'm a big Radiohead fan. And so 2 of my picks come from Radiohead. The first being OK Computer, and the second one being Kid A. Those are the 2 my 2 favorite Radiohead albums, and albums that I've listened to, hundreds of times from beginning to end in my life. I have Radiohead tattoos on my arm. So they're definitely part of who I am as a person. And the third is actually Is This It from The Strokes. It's an album that I was listening to in my teenage years and that I listen to all the time still today, and kind of brings back many memories of my formative years and becoming the man that I am today. So yeah, those three would be it.
That's awesome. Good albums, good artists.
Thank you.
Yeah. And number 2 can relate to number 1. It has sometimes. Name an influential person, living or non-living, that if you can interact with for one night, who would they be? Now, when I say living or non-living, like literally you can go throughout all of history. You know, you can say Moses for all.
Sure.
No, but you know, a lot of times people, you know, they equate 2 to 1. So, but you know, who would it be? Which influential person would you like to sit down and have a conversation with?
I would choose Marcus Aurelius. He is one of the greatest emperors of ancient Rome, also one of the greatest Stoics and philosophers, who's I have a book of his on my desk, and it's it's basically taken from his personal journal that he wrote at the time. For those who don't know who Marcus Aurelius is, they may know the movie Gladiator. He is the emperor that dies, Russell Crowe's character, but he has the son Commodus who takes over. But yeah, Marcus Aurelius is known as one of the greatest Stoics of all time, and his Meditations book is one of my biggest influences in terms of like who I am, how I work, just how I am in terms of character with other people and so on.
One of the greatest thinkers, strategists, philosophers of all time, period, hands down.
Yeah.
His meditations are amazing. I got them both on Audible and the book.
Yeah,
you know?
It's fantastic. I really recommend for anybody to read that book. It's really easy to read. It's basically like journal entries from the time when he was dealing with the plague, his second in command betraying him, being in charge of what at the time was just, it was the biggest empire that there was. And so there's a lot of lessons to be learned. And he was a very smart, introspective man. And I think those lessons all still apply today.
Yeah, to everything. And I think that's why it was so powerful, is because to all avenues of life, you know, war and finance and health and really human nature. He knew how to account for humans being humans. Yeah. And to expect the unexpected from humans. So he was always prepared by the unexpected. I mean, it's just phenomenal. Yeah. Great choice. All right. No, question number 3. In your opinion, what's the best music-focused film of all time for you? Now, what I can stress is it can be like a documentary, a rockumentary, a fictitious movie, you know, a movie where a lot more music is just incorporated into it. You know, it could be anything you want.
Okay. At first, I thought it was going to be like which movies have the best soundtrack. And I was like, oh, I love Quentin Tarantino movies and like Kill Bill, Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. Amazing. But then I realized that, no, that's not what the question is. And I would have to go back to a movie with John Cusack, Jack Black, High Fidelity, which is also from a book. It basically tells a story of, it's a romantic comedy, essentially, but it basically tells a story of a guy that works in a record store and his growing up as an adult and his like amorous relationships and how music is a part of those relationships. And I remember when I first read the book and then watched the movie, it was part of cementing the idea of how important music is and how like the music that I listen to in my everyday life, or when I'm going through good moments in life, bad moments in life, breakups, backpacking or hiking, enjoying a specifically amazing camping trip, or just being in my backyard with my wife and my dog, like all of those songs that I listen at those times are the soundtrack to my life. And for each of those moments and emotions, there is a song that is ideal for it. And that's what that movie and the book before it taught me.
Such a great book and movie. It's a good choice. That's the first one. And by the way, somebody else did actually choose Pulp Fiction. 1 or 2 people, I think, chose Pulp Fiction. I know one for sure because of like from the soundtrack and the way. I love their perspective as well. The music integrating to create the flow of the movie as well. But
yes,
High Fidelity. I love when somebody offers a new one. So that's a great choice. And then question number 4. what is an important book, podcast, Audible, show, anything that has really helped you navigate your creativity and passion?
I would say this again is a little bit of a hard question because there's a lot of directions that I can go. There is an author, his name is Ryan Holiday. Yeah. He is one of the modern Stoics and philosophers. And he introduced me to, a friend introduced me to him. Shout out to my friend Bar, who introduced me to him at a point in my life when I really needed it. And then through Ryan Holiday's books, in particular, The Obstacle is the Way, Ego is the Enemy. Those are two of his books. He basically takes stoicism, which is an ancient philosophy from back the Greek and Roman times, and sort of modernizes it and attaches more recent examples that anybody can relate to, and makes basically this philosophy very approachable and digestible. So his books, but he also has daily podcasts, yes. And he also has like daily emails, and he has other books on the subject. I think the entire offering that he has in terms of modern take on stoicism is brilliant. I recommend it to all of the people that I'm very, very, very close with and that I want to see succeed. So yeah, that would be my choice.
All great books. Yep, the Daily Stoic. That
exactly.
The email's got about, I think, like 350,000 people on that list at this point. It's been great to see him over the years just continue to grow and evolve in all of that. And I love the modern take on Stoicism. Not related, but I'm a huge fan of Naval Ravikant, which also very like Stoic, but that multidisciplinary thinker, philosopher, businessman, investor, creator, meditator, so, and I'm a firm believer in this kind of multidisciplinary world that we live in, that we're able to be. And Ryan's such a great choice. Amazing. All right. So diving right in, I would love for the audience to hear about like your story. How do we get, and I also want you to explain even more in detail 6 a.m., but how do we get here? You can go as far back as you want, beginning of time if you need to, whatever you want.
Sure.
But how did we get here to 6 a.m.? And then, what's going on with 6 a.m.? What'd you like about them as well? And you could talk about, some of the other brands that you've built along the way as well too, but you can go starting way back when.
Yeah. I guess sort of my journey within the electronic music industry, if you will, started back when I was in college in Chicago. So this was like 2011 to 2014, 15, where I basically began as a club promoter, just like getting people to various nightclubs where I was already going to see my favorite DJs and artists. I just built a brand off of that, made a lot of really good connections and lifelong friendships in the process. And then, it came to a point when I graduated from DePaul University in 2015 that I had decided basically that I wanted a change in my life. And at the time, that change for also personal reasons related to my girlfriend at the time, who was from LA. We decided to move to LA at the end of 2015. And basically when I moved here, I was finding ways to remain connected with, not remain connected, but to connect with the local scene in LA, the house and techno scene. And I was in a Facebook group where somebody from 6 a.m. had put a job insert there where they were looking for a blogger. So somebody to just write articles and do artist interviews and talk about releases and whatnot. And very part-time, kind of on the side thing. And I applied. And I began working as a blogger and writing articles and covering different happenings in the house and techno scene all over the world for 6 a.m. That's how my role started within the company. Gia Wang, who's the founder and the CEO of the company, saw the work that I was doing, and basically we fast forward to like the fall, autumn of 2016. I ended up going to Europe for a couple of months, and I went to AD, Amsterdam Dance Event, which is a massive multi-venue 5-day festival which attracts about like 500,000 people from all over the world. And I went to a lot of techno shows during this 5-day period where I was just inspired, energized, and reinvigorated. And even though I had left Chicago thinking I wasn't going to work in the event side of the industry anymore, just this energy that I picked up in Amsterdam made me want to dive back into it. And I basically came back to LA and I sat down with Gia and I told him what I had experienced. And I told him what I was feeling and the fact that I saw potential for 6 a.m., who was doing about 3 to 4 events a year at the time, to do more to keep putting Los Angeles on the map for house and techno and just elevate the events that we were doing more, better production, and just increasing the bookings and bringing some artists that had either never been to LA or hadn't been to LA in a long, long time. I was fortunate enough that Gia gave me the opportunity to do that and to work on bookings for 6 a.m. after I kind of gave him my spiel from my experience, and he let me roll with it. You know, he gave me that trust, and sort of that's how it started. At the same time, I decided that, you know, while I was doing the bookings for 6 a.m., I wanted to also be personally involved and have some skin in the game with events in LA. And I started Synthetic Minds, which is a techno-focused event brand. And the idea at the time was for Synthetic Minds to just do smaller events with some other local promoters here in LA. Whereas for 6 a.m., I would do the bookings and do bigger events because 6 a.m. was already on the way to doing these bigger events. And that was all happening for the beginning of 2017. But in the beginning of June 2017, I did a booking of an artist from the UK called Phase. He goes by O with a bar through Phase. The O with the bar through is an audio engineering symbol that means phase, or it's pronounced phase for anybody who doesn't know. And I did the booking for 6 a.m. And 6 a.m. was supposed to partner with some other of our friends and colleagues here in LA. But those friends and colleagues already had an event planned that day. So Gia and I talked and we said, well, what if we make it a 6 a.m. Synthetic Minds collaboration? And we just partner up on this event. And that's basically how our first event happened. We partnered up for this event. We saw that we worked really well together, not only on like just him trusting me with the booking, but the marketing of the event, the promotion, the production, and all of that, the operations. The event was a success, not necessarily, again, from a financial standpoint, but just from the whole experience and how we worked together. And so we just began then doing more events together. And that's basically how my role evolved within 6 a.m. I started to take on more responsibilities on the event side of things and just overseeing the production, the operations, the bookings, the marketing. And at the same time, I was also starting to take more on the social media and the content side of things. And and that's kind of what brought us to where we are today.
There's a lot I really liked about hearing the journey when you're talking about, you know, Synthetic Minds. And what I thought was cool was sort of like, hey, if over here is doing bigger events with 6 a.m., we could do smaller, stay ear to the ground, you know, with like what's up and coming, service a very niche market. And the best part is at any given time, when some of these people are ready for something bigger, well, you are a direct, you know, resource for that. So It's like very supply chain of the music world. And then also I like what you were saying about the founder of 6 a.m. And I think that was incredible that he sees collaboration like, good for you. Like, that's smart. And hey, here's what we can do next. And now let's try that. And then this expands. And now we can do these things, you know, because, and I think I also attribute that to being, you know, the arts and the music world, and everything is much more, you know, collaborative. But, you know, business is still business. And a lot of times people, I think, get in their head or their ego. And he really wasn't. He was just like, let's try this. Let's do this. You know, I think that's incredible. And for recognizing like, oh, there's a good opportunity here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I want to give a little shout out to you guys, like thinking through like that as well too. Collaboration can lead to way bigger things and new markets that sometimes, or new opportunities you hadn't thought of, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was, again, I couldn't be more grateful for the fact that I was, given that opportunity, and obviously I took it on, and we made something good out of it. But if he didn't have the open mind of
Yes.
seeing, like you said, that opportunity of seeing that, look, I wasn't thinking about doing this before, but here we have a problem. We have a booking, and
Right.
the usual person or the usual company that I would collaborate with isn't available. Okay, how can we make something good out of this? And out of that obstacle, we made something good, and we built our work brand, and we built this collaboration that's now been going on for we're on the 4th year, and our events have gotten better and better in the process. So I absolutely agree with you, and specifically with regards to electronic music and the house and techno side of things, the more underground sounds. I've always been a believer, so has Gia, that collaboration is the key. Like, we should be working together and finding ways that make sense for us to work together and help each other. Because at the end of the day, we're all part of the one, they're still relatively small scene and industry. And instead of seeing each other as competition, or seeing ways that we want to be, we want to be better than ourselves, but instead of seeing each other as competition, how can we work together? How can we help each other? And realizing that we're all a part of a big ecosystem, and that if we all do well, the smaller promoters, the smaller artists, the bigger ones, even your Insomniacs doing big festivals, it's all part of the same funnel that ends up trickling down, people that dig deeper into the music and so on. And I think that's been our mantra and our outlook into all of this. And having that outlook, I think, not only has it paid off for us, but it's paid off in building, being part of building the community that we have now here in LA.
It's very stoic of you. Yeah, I like it. It's true. I'd like to think, and this has been brought up on another conversation and podcast, that that's really the state of affairs of where we're in, and where we're heading to even more. This collaborative, collaboration over competition. I also think it's indicative of the times we're living in, the internet, everybody kind of having more artistic freedom to express themselves and their brands, and how we can all kind of come together. And also philosophically and spiritually, abundance is a shared concept, like the scarcity and a scarcity mindset. There really is no place for it, and it's usually and traditionally and historically ended up in not so good a favor when a scarcity mindset and absolute power corrupts absolutely. What I mean? I love the mentality and that growth and within the opportunity. Are you still heavily involved with the artist booking with 6 a.m., but you've also got this new role now? I would love for you to kind of talk about what are some of the things that are happening right now with you and 6 a.m.
Yeah, I still do pretty much all of the bookings related to 6 a.m. and, and Synthetic Minds in our work event series, as well as I'm involved, obviously, as one of the partners for the bookings for Compound and Reform, which are 2 other event series that we do here in LA. Reform being our festival project, essentially, that it's not in its 3rd year, but 2nd editions, because last year obviously we couldn't do it, and it's this coming Labor Day weekend. It's 30 artists over the space of 15 hours and 4 different rooms of music. So with some of the best North American house and techno artists. So I was definitely heavily involved with the booking of that. But yeah, my role has grown. We've decided that my role became that of the Chief Growth Officer, because essentially that is what I had been doing with our content team, with our social media team, with the events, and then also assisting with our online, what's not even just online anymore, but with our apparel store, because we launched an apparel store, shopby6am.com. We have merch booths at our event. We're working on doing merch booths at festival, and then we have a massive online store. So it's just working side by side with Gia, the CEO, to grow all of these and to scale these as we move forward. And whilst I do still work in the trenches on the event side of things. Now I kind of have a more overarching role with regards to the social media and the content, because we have really, really amazing people that we've brought on board in the last year that have stepped up to the plate. A really brilliant editor-in-chief, Daisy, who's doing a great job with the content. And then we have also Daisy, but David working on the social media side of things for our social media platforms. And I'm just kind of overseeing that and passing down all of the skills and all of the tricks that I learned through the years on the job.
There's so many people, I don't think that they sometimes realize how important and massive of a role it is with social media and content. I've been doing it for 9 years.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
It's a lot.
I mean, and I love when people are like, "How'd you figure it out?" You're like, you just kind of Google and YouTube it. Well, and you grow with it. Everybody's always asking each other, but it's a lot. It's a lot of work, and I think that a lot of people don't always understand the dynamic of it. On one hand, you're now in production, right? Everything from video to audio to written to everything else you can imagine, to photography, all these components that make the creative. And then the other side of it, how much of it drives business. Like, I love the fact that you guys have Shop by 6 a.m. I was looking that up the other day, and that it allows even more so the diversification within the business to do other things that are complementary to the business. But again, it's a lot of work, right?
Absolutely.
What was the decision to implement the apparel merch, which I'm a huge fan of, by the way? I think in this day and age, I think you kind of have to.
Yeah.
I think it's very complimentary, and it's a brand extension when people not only buy it, but then wear it everywhere,
Exactly. Yeah. The idea came from Gia and Johnny, who is our brand manager and shop manager.
Mm-hmm.
I think now is about 2 years ago. So this was while, before a sort of pandemic or anything like that occurred. And I will admit, at first, that was my hesitancy from past experience, because, when all you're doing is like slapping a logo on top of something, that can get diluted very quickly and kind of old very quickly. But G and Johnny took the shop into specific creative directions that have proven to be really successful, not only in creating just another arm of 6 a.m., but really in connecting with our audience, whether it's people that come to our events or just, follow us on social media, read our articles, listen to our mixes that we have. And during the pandemic, the shop was the only real way we could connect with people that we couldn't dance with anymore. And it was also the one way we managed to kind of somewhat, still with difficulty and still with, admittedly, with financial hardship and debt, but we could at least still keep 6 a.m. alive and weather through like 15 months of not having events. And at the same time, connecting with our audience in the process, because people were now wearing our shirts, remembering being on the dance floor or looking forward to when we could dance together again. And a lot of the designs that we did kind of, evoke those emotions on purpose. And it was a fantastic way for us to stay connected and for our community to stay connected with us during that period.
A lot of what you said is very important. I love towards the end when you said evoke the emotion. And I think that that's why I agree with you. If you're just slapping on a logo, anybody can do that. And it's not continuing the conversation of the brand within the community offline. But when you actually think of merchandise the way you think of Instagram or TikTok or Twitch or Discord or whatever as another place to express yourself, and you're taking that same creativity and putting it on a physical product in a digital world we live in, well, now we're bridging two worlds into one,
Right.
Into one massive community, I should say. So yeah, when you take the time to creatively express yourself, because I was looking through some of the merch and the dad hats and the shirts and sweatshirts and the hoodie, all of it, like, it's cool. Like, you could tell like it's being thought through.
Right.
And an extension of, hey, this is like how our crew rolls. Like, this is how we like in the community all feel. And people want, even in a digital world, to have something tangible that sparks, hey, we're part of this community. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. And that was the initial, intent with it. And that's the direction that we've taken. And the response has been brilliant.
That's incredible. And to your point about diversification, look, times were a little interesting and tough. They were tough on a lot of people. And I think it caused a lot of people to say, hey, you know what? If we hadn't already, we have to make sure that we rely on more than one way of doing things within our business to stay afloat and still provide whatever experience, product or service we are to the people who rely on us, and find other ways depending on moods and whatever are the needs of the customer base at that time anyways. So
exactly.
So good job in doing that as well too.
Thank
right?
you.
Yeah. And being able to pivot and take those risks and just do it. I think a lot of times people can get caught up overthinking too much, but it's like, we really don't know what we don't know until we do it. And then when we do it, if we can kind of block out all the noise in the industry and everything else and be like, hey, like, you guys feeling this? Like, is this helping? What are your thoughts? What are your feedback? The community loves that. Customers and clients, people, they love that. Like, they love being heard. And then that usually grounds down into, the pivots that you need to change to make the things, bigger and better anyways. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's right.
Okay. So now events have come back. Mm-hmm. How's that going?
It's going well. Events came back beginning at the end of June. In LA, that's when events opened up. So we waited, and then we've had, I think now it's 4 events under our belt. All 4 of these events sold out. The reception from our crowd has been fantastic. The enthusiasm on the dance floor and just the passion of just being able to be back and see friends it's safely, but at the same time to be able to let go and dance and kind of forget what's going on, maybe at home or process that through the dance floor and through that community connection. It's been amazing. I mean, it's every single night that we've had so far has been fantastic. And, we have, I know by the time maybe this conversation goes live, these events will be over, but we have a couple events back to back coming up. And we have that Reform Festival on September 5th on Labor Day weekend that we're just so looking forward to. It's on the personal level, it's just been amazing to be able to see people that I hadn't seen in so long, to be able to hear the bass coming from those massive stacks of speakers, to be able to dance again and just kind of get lost on the dance floor. It's a feeling that's unlike anything else and that you couldn't really replicate despite all of our attempts to stay connected with the community. And so I'm glad we're back, and I hope that, we're back for good, knock on wood and everything. But yeah, it's been great.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? Is
exactly.
that the famous expression?
It does.
Everybody's like, look, I was in for a long time. It's time to get out and reconnect, which really connectivity is, there's a lot more healing power in that than isolation. But that's a different conversation, I'm sure. But so it's great that, I think that people are back out and I would say hopefully stay out. I want to switch the convo a little bit, back over to stoicism and mental health. You mentioned Marcus Aurelius, and you mentioned it's a big part of your day and your days and your routines, and the Meditations book by Marcus Aurelius. What led into that? I love asking that question because not just with stoicism, but like connecting to your inner core and self, because everybody's got a different reason for why they do it. Some heavier than others, but like what led you to there, and also, what you think with the importance that you're gathering from out of that, because I think a lot of people listening, as much as, we love music and events and being out and doing all these things, I think it's also the relationship we have with ourselves is the most important. And can we sit with ourselves and for very long periods of time, whether because of a health crisis or just because we want to genuinely be home, enjoying who we are, and in relation to other close loved ones. So I would feel free to just go on a tear about like what brought you into it and what is your take so far and what do you recommend?
Yeah. Essentially what happened kind of touches upon a little bit of what I mentioned before with my journey at 6 a.m. and coming to LA. But in summer of 2016, it'd been about 6-7 months that I'd been in LA, and I didn't really know many people. I had a few friends from Chicago that had moved here. And, I had already met Gia and a couple of people at 6N because I was working as that very, very part-time blogger, if you will, or editor, I guess is the more appropriate name and title. And as I'd mentioned, I'd moved to LA with my now ex-girlfriend, and basically our relationship ended that summer. When that relationship ended, I found myself very lost because I was in a new city. I left a lot of really, really close, good friends back in Chicago. I had gambled on this move. We were living together 6 months into the lease that was a year-long lease. Suddenly I found myself just very lost and feeling very alone. And, this is not the fault of my ex-girlfriend or anything, but just personally, I just hit a really, really bad spot of depression and anxiety, a lot of anxiety about just happiness, what I wanted to do and be in life, where my life was going. I'd already, surpassed my 30th birthday, was questioning a lot of things. Financials were not good. My family's all in Italy. What am I doing? Have I made the right choice? And I just got lost in all of these thoughts that I was having. And those thoughts turned darker and darker every day. The more I wasn't dealing with them the right way. And I started to have self-harm thoughts, suicide thoughts, and I was just not in a good place. And a friend of mine, Bart, who I gave a shout out to earlier, is one of my best friends from Chicago. He introduced me to Ryan Holiday and was basically trying to make me see that there are certain things in life that I cannot control, which is basically sort of what stoicism is about realizing that there's you in this life and there's millions of other people, and millions of other people will make their choices. They will do what they do. And you cannot be arrogant enough to think that you have any power over their choice or over how they decide to treat you, whether it's badly or rightly. You cannot make somebody be a good partner, business-wise. You cannot make somebody love you as an amorous partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife. You cannot choose if suddenly there's an earthquake or it starts raining and your event is not going to do well because nobody wants to come out. There are a lot of things in life that happen that are just life. And we get lost wondering what you could have done different, or beating ourselves up for things that we had absolutely no control over. And because we get lost in that thought and we spiral down in those thoughts and they get darker and darker, we incapacitate ourselves and we're suddenly not looking for solutions anymore. And with stoicism, I learned that not only is there a space to look for solutions, but oftentimes in these obstacles, there is something that we can do that turns that obstacle in that really dark moment into something better, bigger, with more value than you even had before that obstacle came along. Bart introduced me to stoicism. I bought the Daily Stoic, like you mentioned. It's actually what my phone is resting on right now that we're having this conversation with. I bought the Daily Stoic and I started reading it, and my mindset just started to shift. I started to listen to podcasts on the subject, and I started to meditate on hikes. I started to go on hikes alone, and just here in LA, there's a lot of mountains around. So I discovered that the power of nature combined with the power of stoicism and meditation, not necessarily sitting still with my thoughts, but walking with my thoughts and really processing, those thoughts and without allowing anything else to come in. That was kind of my form of meditation. And slowly, day by day, week by week, month by month, my mindset started to change, and I realized that it was all in my mind. It was all my mindset that was driving me to these dark thoughts. I then traveled to Europe. I went to ADE. This was all between summer and October. And that whole process that I went through in those 3 months did something to me where I came back and I decided I knew what I wanted to do. I knew how to do it. I just had to be given that chance. And I was fortunate enough that 2 really close friends, Jackie and Jordan, they allowed me to crash on their couch for a year and a half. And that Gia gave me the opportunity at 6 a.m. Those 3 people helping me in that fashion allowed me to save money for a year and a half, as I paid minimal rent living on a couch in LA. And I was given the opportunity by 6 a.m. to be able to put my skills and my drive and my ideas into tangible use. And with my mindset now having shifted completely, I was now able to create something for myself and work hard. I just devoted everything to work. I didn't really worry about, relationships or anything like that. And then, that's what I did. And I started building my brand and working to keep building 6 a.m. And then a lot of good things just started happening after that. In terms of personal relationships, I ended up meeting my now wife, a later edition of AD. So we met in Amsterdam. She was also obviously involved with the techno house scene here in LA, but we met over there through common friends, and just all of these things started to snowball in the right direction. But it all kind of started from that really, really, really dark couple of weeks that I had, and being introduced to stoicism and just a general concept of mental health, of taking care of yourself, of getting your mind right. Whether it's through stoicism or whatever else may work for you, that was the pivotal change for me.
First of all, thank you for sharing all of that, including especially the vulnerable side of things that I think that sometimes a lot of people think that they're the only ones that have suicide thoughts, dark thoughts, dark thoughts, or the spiraling out of control. And I tell everybody, I'm like, you're more natural than you think. Like it's more common than you think. Like it's the mind can do that to you, and it gets and think about it, in this day and age with more inputs than ever before from so many different places, especially online, especially with the highlight reels, without even knowing what's going on behind the scenes, which is often very different and crazy. I don't know, I try to keep mine very transparent, but yeah, so I love that you're bringing up, like, hey, depression, anxiety, doubting yourself. I was taking some notes of that you were saying, like, where's your life going? Family's all over here. I made these choices. When is it going to work out? Uncertainty is a scary fucking thing. It is. It is until you start to realize you're the co-creator. And exactly. I feel like what happens, and we're probably living in it, but we're not going to go there right now. But like what I think is scaring a lot of people is uncertainty. And I always tell people, I'm like, I had to deal with uncertainty. I mean, I come from a very entrepreneurial family. So uncertainty has been, the obstacle has been in the way for like the whole life. Like something comes up, it's a signal. What can you do differently? How can you critically think your way through? And no one is immune to it. It happens at any time. Depression, anxiety, impatience, doubt, fear, all of it happens, especially uncertainty. And I feel like that the way, through it is through it. It's like, you know what? I'm gonna deal with this. Like, I'm gonna deal with this. I wanna let me understand why I'm feeling this way. And then to your point, having these kinds of, whether Marcus Aurelius or the Daily Stoic or, all of these amazing tools that are out there, especially when you brought up like meditation, I think that the more we connect, the clearer we become. And the clearer we become, the more we're able to deal with ourselves, at any given moment. And I love when you were bringing up, there's a lot of things that just happen in life. You're saying you cannot make somebody be a good partner in business. You cannot choose if somebody loves you or not. And again, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about back at the beginning, but it's like, I always say you have to account for the human factor. I too, I went through it too, starting about 10 years ago. And I'm like, but I did everything right. Why did these people do that? You know? and it's not until you realize, okay, if I'm the common denominator, what can I do differently? Who am I? What are my boundaries? How do I want to be treated? How do I want outcomes to happen? Now, I can't be attached to them, but I can certainly assert my boundaries and my honesty and my truth and my respect if I'm clear, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about, realizing, for me, it's like depression comes from being oftentimes hung up on the past.
Yes.
And worrying about the past and how you could have done things differently,
right,
and this and this and that. And anxiety comes about, like you were saying, the uncertainty of the future. What's going to happen? You don't know. You feel like you're not in control. But if you're able to see that with everything that happens in life, you can only control certain things. And you can always control your reaction to what other people do and what they decide and how they treat you. And your reaction could be, thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't have let this person in my life in the first place. Why did I do that? How did that go wrong? Okay, this is how I'm going to prevent having to deal with this kind of person in the future. Or, whatever that may be, it's all about realizing that there's no point worrying about certain things if you're not able to change them anyways. You're just wasting that emotion, that attention, that all of that focus is getting wasted on something where you could actually take a lesson from whatever happened to you, and in a lot of cases even turn it into something positive.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to deny that you shouldn't feel sad if you're going through a breakup, or that you shouldn't feel disappointed if somebody lets you down, or that, all of these are completely normal human emotions also. And it's completely okay to feel them. But then what? What are you going to do?
Right.
And I think it's putting yourself at that point of cause in your life rather than feeling like you're an effect of everything that's being done to you. And if that includes doing whatever's necessary to make sure injustices don't occur, that people don't treat you the wrong way, that's totally fine. That's part of taking control. But it's that getting lost in those negative emotions that's not going to get you anywhere.
When you bring up a very good point, several, you should never deny yourself of the emotions you're feeling, nor should you project them onto anybody else. Because if you are feeling the emotion, sometimes asserting your boundaries, people don't realize, well, you're actually behaving kind of like the very thing you're feeling that you don't like. And so, and that's what I think I love about stoicism. It's like, let me understand, not react, but respond. And if I know and understand my emotions, then I also begin to know and understand that anybody across from me, the human factor, may or may not know their emotions. So most likely, who am I to sit here and now, attack back? That won't do anything. You cannot convince anybody. You cannot try to tell someone to do anything else, nor should you really want to. And I know that that's sometimes a hard concept because we want to defend our honor and all that stuff. But I think there's a lot more said in the unsaid when you can, understand your emotions enough to, to not respond or to react from them, but to later respond and go, oh, you know what? This isn't probably even really about me. They're actually having a hard moment internally, so they're projecting onto me. Or oh, they're actually behaving like this because that's just who they are, or fight or flight or survival or whatever they're going through, or just ignorant, or whatever it might be. And if I'm reacting instead of responding, then I'm not behaving like the better version of what I think it should be, to represent, let me show you the how versus striking back, which I think is happening a lot in society. And I totally get it, because I think a lot of displaced emotions of everybody wants to finally start speaking out from their voice. I'm like, now that you have your voice, there's a responsibility in understanding the emotions and the triggers. And you're absolutely right. You shouldn't deny those feelings, but you should definitely get to know them so they don't rule you, but you can master them, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And what I always tell people, that's something that I learned through all of this process, is also whenever you're dealing with anybody and kind of a problem, or you're trying to get something done, is to always look at the product of what you're trying to achieve with that person, and then work back from it. Figure out what you got to do to get there. So like, you're having an argument with a business partner, or you're having an argument with your spouse or a friend. Is your angry reaction now going to get you where you want to get? Or should you maybe pause a second, reassess the situation, think, what is that person going through? How can we find that middle common ground? And then what am I going to do in response that's actually going to get me where I want to be with that person, which hopefully is a resolution or common ground and an agreement and whatnot. And I think, because our natural instinct is to just respond, like stimulus response right away. We don't think about what that response is. We don't give ourselves time. A lot of the times people can worsen their relationship with that particular situation. And I did it myself. I did it through that breakup in 2016. I'm glad my life has gone the way it's gone since, but I also did not react in the way I would react now. I've learned where my mistakes lay there in the way I reacted. I responded in the way I did not give the other person space to work through their feelings and thoughts. And there's a lot of lessons I learned there, because I was just also reacting based off of my feeling, and they just snowballed into, what I mentioned before.
So true. And we have greater empathy in other people and understanding them when we have greater empathy for ourselves and understanding of ourselves. Because then we're like, if I'm going through it and I'm okay, you must be really going through it if you're like sounding the way you're sounding. So we stop taking things personally, and we, for the most part, we still have our moments. We still have moments, because, and that's the beauty of mastery, is because someone will always find just that right thing that they didn't even know. You're like, oh, I didn't realize that trigger still exists, or I didn't even know that there was one there. You know, what a great way to humble down and understand the emotion. And so that's where, and then the less we react to other people, and the more we realize, oh wow, everybody's really going through something, how they're communicating will give me an idea of where they're at in dealing and understanding with themselves. And that's why, like, I almost instantly, anybody that's like barking or like really yelling or really screaming, I'm like, do you need a moment? Because like, do you need a moment? Like, I love you. Like, let me give you some space. Like, do you need a moment, or do you need to just vent it out? Like, get it out, get it all out, get it out. I'm going to listen real quick. I'm not going to take it on, but I'm going to listen, because I think that's important. It allows us, I think, to communicate and really handle people. And you brought up also a really great point about, what's the end result? Because I think it's easy to get wrapped up in sometimes the details. Obviously, two different individuals might have two totally different perspectives, even wanting the same outcome. Exactly. Isn't that most of the world?
Exactly. And it's about working back from that and setting your ego aside. And sometimes it's like, the other person may not see that they've made a mistake, or they talked in the wrong way, and sometimes you don't either, but it's okay. Just set the ego aside and find that common ground that, once you've cooled down, you've analyzed, and how to move forward with that conversation or with that relationship.
So true. And I find a lot of times you can kind of get to that, that need or want simply by just being like, what do you need? What do you want? What's going on? What do you want? Interestingly enough, asking that question is such an amazing question, because most people have been so on the offensive and ready to fight, or defensive, I should say, ready to fight, or ready to or fight some other cause, or they're triggered up with emotions, that if you don't sit with yourself, and like you were saying, you go on these hikes or these walks where you're kind of like, thinking with your thoughts and processing new things, which I do all the time too, creates a lot of creativity, clarity, like, oh, this is what I can do. This is what I want. This is what I need. This is where I'm at. This is where I'm going. You're going to potentially have better outcomes. You may not control the outside world, But I have said before, you can potentially control your outcomes because you're kind of like, you become very clear on what your needs are. So I always think it's very interesting to ask people like, what do you need? What do you want? And that's usually where you can see kind of where they're at. And I think if what you'll find is a majority of people want the same things, for the most part, the same things, then it's about working backwards, right?
Exactly.
So I wanted to also ask you, just because it's why not? And I find this next topic. I started because I'm a technologist at heart. I love technology. Because crypto is technology and economics and finance, it made me have a new relationship with economics and finance that is fascinating to me, because I also think it's a very spiritual thing, which some people will be like, what? I'm like, if you understood blockchain and human behavior and nodes and how transaction and transparency and all these other things work, it's creating a new system that, cannot be manipulated from bad actors that you sometimes see in what they call like in true economics. So it's a whole new world. I would just love to get your take on, why is crypto a fascinating thing? I'm finding a lot of people in music and the arts. I'm finding a lot of my creative friends in other industries, creatives in general, and my techies, of course, all loving, crypto and blockchain. What is it for you? And, what do you see with it for the future?
Yeah, I've been, digging into cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology basically since, I guess it was the end of 2016. Again, that year where it all happened.
Yes.
For my life, and that includes discovering cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. But I was introduced to it as I already knew of Bitcoin and whatnot. But when I was first introduced to it later on, it was more as a way to make money, to be honest with you, just transparent. That's what I was introduced to. And I was like, all right, well, just like with anything, I'm like, okay, there's stocks, there's this investment. Like, why? I'm looking at the charts. I'm starting to dig into it. I'm like, oh, like this, the trends, this is this. And then I discovered Ethereum. From Bitcoin, I discovered Ethereum, and I started to really study the technology behind Ethereum, blockchain technology, and the capabilities that it had at the time, and the promises for the future if blockchain technology keeps expanding. And I immediately saw the power of decentralized finance, blockchain technology, and how this can affect multiple industries, from supply chain to medical industry to again, just finances in general, and decentralize the power of money. And knowing that historically money is what makes the world go around, but is also what is used to control a lot of things in the world, also with a negative connotation. I realized that the future, as we are going towards a kind of a freer world, would move towards the adoption of this blockchain technology and decentralized finance. And Ethereum being the biggest at the time, still is actually the biggest, in its field in terms of its specific technology. Then I jumped in and I started to dig deeper, and I started to look at other cryptocurrencies and other technologies and how they're adopted. And obviously there's thousands and thousands of them. And there's people that only believe in some and people that only believe in others. But essentially I realized the power of the ecosystem of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, as well as the direction that the centralized finance is going in. And that it was just so big and already so established that there was no way of stopping it. Despite some risks in terms of some governments wanting to maybe add some boundaries and things like that, but it's already so widespread and technology is already applied at so many levels that I just kept getting deeper and deeper into it, and sharing that information with people close to me too. And we even launched our own cryptocurrency at 6 a.m. called Rave, which is on the Rally network.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what Rally does, it's its own cryptocurrency on the Ethereum network. And it then creates sort of creative coins. So if you are a brand, if you are a celebrity, an artist, or if you are a gamer and you want to have your own currency that you can use within your own ecosystem to, reward fans, to have fans be able to buy tickets or merchandise or whatever, they've created this platform on Rally where you can basically mint your own coin and create that ecosystem. And that's what we did, because we see that also as part of, again, building a community and creating our own ecosystem that's independent of the US dollar or whatever other currency is out there. And inflation is also another big part of what's going on right now. We're seeing in our everyday life with the power of the dollar going down as more of it is printed. And yeah, so that's basically kind of like the whole thought process that I've developed. And I could go into the nitty-gritty details about specific other cryptocurrencies, but I just see how this is going to become, or it already is, and it's going to become more and more part of how we do business, how our finances are regulated, and so on in the future.
I love all of it. And I, for full transparency, it was the same. I was led in from like, hey, this, look at this from a financials perspective. I just quickly adapted it and understood it because I was like, oh, I get what Ethereum does. I get from a technological standpoint. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And then some of the other coins came out. I was like, yep, that makes sense. And then other coins came out, but to the point you're bringing about, like whether it be supply chain, and I always tell people, I'm like, basically look at it like this. I was like, if you see a bunch of different things in this world that experience copyright infringement, trademark infringement, loss, theft, damage, hacking, security, like all these different things, like yeah. I'm like, have you seen some form of it? Have you been a part of a business that had a problem with it, or like in your personal life, or your website got hacked, anything? And they're like, well, yeah. I'm like, well, imagine a world in which technology actually helps solve each of these different areas.
Exactly.
And they're like, oh, and I'm like, so if we're living in Web 2.0, Web 3.0 is being developed very quickly to help solve a lot of the problems that have been going on, and the actors who have been taking part in, any number of activities that have really abused a little bit of the Web 2.0, and it's bringing back a level of security, transparency, creativity, ownership, distribution, all of these things. It's just it's meant to solve for a lot of problems that we've been having technologically.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And it's not a flawless technology. And I think that's what a lot of people get lost in. It's still so young and at its infancy, and yes, still so powerful. But, the people that are behind Ethereum and behind all of some of the other coins that are doing great things they have a map and a projection for where this technology is going. And they have solutions for some of its current problems, including people that are worried about its eco-sustainability and things of the sort. There are solutions being worked in that, and it's easy to get lost, I think, in the very minor negatives and seeing them out of context and not realizing the amount of good that this technology is doing and will do the more it gets implemented in our everyday lives.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan. I've been like this my entire life. It's the family I even came from, which is, when everybody's laughing at it, take a stronger, deeper look at it, right?
Yeah.
So and I put up on my stories the meme today of the one about the internet. It's just a fad. It won't last. It was like back in 2000. And I'm like,
right.
Like, and I tell people, I'm like, imagine, you remember when you guys like thought like email wasn't really going to be replaced, or it was going to be replaced, but like, no, don't worry about it. It's just a fad, and there's still the mail, and all these other things that you said that, they're just fads. Like, I'm like, it's kind of like that, only, I was like, you know what? I'm going back to the 90s right now when all these things were first made. I'm like, you all took place in what was to become web and Web 2.0. I'm going to take place in what I believe is going to become is Web 3.0, and I'm going to have my time with it, And I just also encourage people also to look at the utility of it all. Like you were bringing up about the creator coin with Rally. I think what Rally is doing is fantastic, and for any artist or musician that's listening right now, very important point is that yes, tokenization. I always tell people, check out Token Economy or Tokenization, the book Token Economy. It's a great way to understand that you as the creator will have the direct relationship with the end consumer of what it is you are creating, oftentimes without a lot of the middlemen, women, gatekeeper type folk that,
Exactly.
Everything from like merchant fees on top of merchant fees on top of merchant fees, or, exchange rates and exchanges happening, days, not seconds, or, everybody kind of having their hand in on your work versus you,
Exactly.
it's a whole other level of ownership, but it does require accountability. So back to the stoicism and the spirituality, but you have to do the work. You have to understand yourself. You have to understand and know what you want. You have to look for within you what you think you want to create for your future. And by the way, and I wanted to circle back, it was like earlier when you're talking about depression and anxiety, look, yes, it is definitely able to be anxious about the future with uncertainty. But the beautiful part is, and it took me many years to fully understand that, the fact is you really can create it from a present state. You can create what you want. You're not it's just that I think so often a system that has bound the people by not thinking about what they want, suddenly, wait a minute, what do I want? Well, now take some time. Discovery takes time. But the beautiful part is it really is whatever you want to create. And I think it's part of the uncertainty is but I don't know what I want. Because for a long time, maybe you hadn't been asked. Start asking those questions and then have fun with the discovery of figuring out what those things are. And quicker than you think, I think you'd find that out. But that's why I relate it all. But this is incredible. What do you guys have coming up? Anything amazing that you want to share that 6 a.m. or your other brands are doing?
Well, the main biggest focus that we're working on is on Reform Festival that I mentioned a couple of times, just because it is our biggest project at the moment, and that takes place on Labor Day weekend here in LA. Basically on Sunday, September 5th from 5 p.m. till 2 a.m. We're having 4 rooms of music with some of the biggest house and techno artists, all American lineup. We have Danny Tenalia, who's a legend from New York, Josh Wink, also has been around since the 90s from Philadelphia. We have Headless Horseman, ROs, Trunkit Hyperactive. We have an entire room of experimental music with also 2 really, really, really talented visual artists doing visuals in 2 separate rooms. So it's basically a multi-sensory experience across 4 rooms. And then we have an after party after that in downtown LA, which is curated by DVS1, who's one of the best techno curators here in North America. He will be playing an extended set, but also curating the sound system and the lighting. And so it's basically a European-like festival experience that we're doing on September 5th. And it's the stepping stone into what we want for 2022, which is to have an even bigger, more festival feel edition of Reform. So we're just scaling this and growing this. But yeah, it's our biggest event to date. We're super, super excited for it. I think we're basically a month away today. So it's coming up really quick. We also have a few other really dope bookings coming up for the fall and even next year that we're already working on. Some names that I know people really want to see. But that's for me to announce a little bit later.
Totally understandable. That's incredible. Where can everybody find you guys online? And as not just 6 a.m., but also you if they wanted to reach out as well.
For 6 a.m., www.6amgroup.com. On there, you can find our articles. You can find access to our shop. But you could also go to shopby6am.com. But on the 6 a.m. site, you could also find our tickets for our events. So you'll see our event lineup on there. On social media, at 6 a.m. Group for Twitter, SoundCloud, Instagram, Facebook. And for myself, you can find me at Italian Reckoner on Instagram and Twitter. Obviously, that name pays homage to my Italian nationality, but also Reckoner being one of the Radiohead songs I really, really like. So kind of circling back to your first question here from earlier.
It's incredible. I've got all the socials pulled up as you're saying that, and I was writing a few of them down. Incredible having you on the podcast and talking about all these things.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you don't even realize this was almost an hour and 15. You see how fast it goes?
Wow.
I know.
That was quick. Yeah,
I know.
That was, but it was a very interesting conversation. I really appreciate you inviting me on and asking me to talk about these topics because personally, they're very important for me, especially the stoicism, mental health aspect of things. It's I've been gifting the Daily Stoic when I can. I've been lending some of my Ryan Holiday books where I can, and I would love nothing more than to know that just one person listens to this and discovers something from this conversation that can help them in their life.
Absolutely, and we'll make sure it's also in the show notes. But I think it's important for everybody to like see that, you know, life is, again, multifaceted. You know, it's like, hey, we can talk about music and events and fashion and merchandise and business, but we can also talk about like, but how are we doing amongst all of it? And why are we doing it? And since we can do anything, what would we most like to do that feels most in alignment with who we are and our purpose while we grow? And that growth is a process and it definitely takes time, and that we don't have to be anywhere that anybody else tells us we have to be. We just have to be. And then we have to kind of grow that person from there. And so that's exactly why I like having all of the conversations on all the different things. And I really appreciate you being, on the show, and, looking forward to staying connected. And
absolutely.
And stay back here just for 1 second. For everybody listening, just really want to thank you guys for tuning in and listening to Marco's story and his background. Please, check out 6 a.m. and him online. It'll all be included here in the show notes. We've been growing the movement, so we're really, really excited by that. And I thank you guys constantly for giving the feedback. Please give a 5-star review on Apple. That always obviously helps, really helps. And I really appreciate the reach from that. And I mentioned back at the beginning, you guys can reach out to @WeAreOrlove and @Matt Gottesman, MattGottesman on Insta. Like we're happy. You could DM us, you can reply, you can email us, whatever it might be. For those of you that are listening to this on Spotify or Apple or Google or wherever, you can actually watch this interview on YouTube. Please go there and subscribe there. Check us out. Feel free to leave us comments. We love the feedback. We love talking to people. Just really, really, truly appreciate you guys. And, constantly grateful for you tuning in every single week. And we're out. MAN on Insta. Like we're happy. You could DM us, you can reply, you can email us, whatever it might be. For those of you that are listening to this on Spotify or Apple or Google or wherever, you can actually watch this interview on YouTube. Please go there and subscribe there. Check us out. Feel free to leave us comments. We love the feedback. We love talking to people. Just really, really, truly appreciate you guys. And, constantly grateful for you tuning in every single week. And we're out.